Welcome to the EZCODE Projects Series Setup video number 4. If you have not done so already, please complete the previous EZCODE Projects Series Setup videos. For those of you that have done so, let's begin. Open up VS Code. From the application menu, click File, and from the drop-down menu, select Add Folder to Workspace. In the pop-up window, find and select the EZCODE directory created during the previous videos. Mine's in Projects. There's my directory. I'm going to add it and open up the Explorer. Then I'm going to open up the source file, and I'm going to open and double-click on the code.js file. I already opened up source, double-click. Here is the file now. Empty to the right. Now type as I do, pause the video or slow down the speed when needed. Everything I'm about to go over takes a bit of time to understand. So if you're a bit confused, just go over the video again and watch as I type. We're going to begin with a window on load, and we're going to give it a load function. Now, a quick explanation of this: understand that this file, code.js, is going to load when we load the view HTML file because we've linked it here. Now, when the browser gets it, again, I'm going to do the inspect, open up the console down here, and just know that the browser already has things going on. So if I type window here and enter, you can see there's already something that's been created by the browser. This is what we're referring to in the JS file. Just like window, there's another piece of code in here that's called document, and you'll see how we use that. In the case of document, it's the actual web document. They're talking about the HTML here that's been put together as a piece of code that has a bunch of methods that we're going to use on top of this. So just in case it's a mystery as to where we're getting these things, the window points to the window, and you'll see very soon the document. So the window has a property on it called onLoad that we can assign a function to. This here could be any word that we want to. If we wanted to call it butter, we could do so. In this case, we're going to use JavaScript here, and we're going to make a function, and guess what that name would be if we used butter? It would be butter. However, let's not do that. So instead, what we'll do is we'll just call it load so we understand its behavior. And then we have a couple parentheses that a function gets, and we're going to go new line and get a couple curly brackets, and we're going to enter into them. So this is how we set up any function that we're going to do. We call function, we name it, in this case it's load, and then we're going to tab in here to create our function. And for this, we're going to create a type of variable called a constant, and it just is an abbreviated const, and then that's the JavaScript part, and now we're going to name it. I'm going to name this thing that we're about to assign to, I'm going to call it view, and I'm going to get an equal sign to say, hey, this const view equals. And now I'm going to use the document, just like we talked about earlier, that's in the browser, and I already know the methods that are on it, which this will take time to understand, but that's okay. You just have to type what I'm typing. You don't have to understand this yet. So I'm going to get element by ID. Now, the great thing with any code editor is it should bring up methods that are on objects you commonly use. So that's why those come up very fast, and I can just tab through them. Once again, just pause the video and slow it down when you need to. I'm going to do a parentheses here, and I'm going to send a bit of information to this method. And that bit of information is view container. So what I'm saying is, document, get this element by the ID. The ID happens to be view container that we created during the HTML video. And you can see there's a div here with ID view container. That's what we're targeting. So once, again, the window loads the HTML document, it's going to know about a div that has an ID of view container. We're going to grab it using the document, and we're going to assign it temporarily to a const named view. Now I'm going to double space down. I'm going to create another const. I'm going to just call this one greeting equals. And again, I'm going to use the document, and I'm going to create an element. And that element type is going to be a div. Now, once again, we've used the document to use the create element method, and I've passed in something it already expects. It's the type of element we're going to make. This could be HTML, body, whatever we want to make. In this case, we're just going to make another div, very common element used in any website. And just like this div, I'm using this div as the view, but I'm going to, or at least we're going to put one right here in this blank space. So to do that, we need to create one first. So the document create element div. Now we have a greeting, and I want to assign something to that greeting. So just like anything else, once it's created, it's been named, we're going to reference it by the name. So I wouldn't say const greeting again. I would say greeting. It's already been named, and that item that was returned by this method is going to have some properties on it. I happen to know that a div usually has an inner HTML for its content, and we're going to assign a string value to that. Now, a string value can be single or double quotes, but not one of each. So I can't do this together to make a string, or this together. So you can see Visual Studio, it already puts the other one. So I already have the closing tag on there, and I can type right away inside of it. I typically use the single quotes. And honestly, you should too, until you don't need to. There are situations where you might run into using a double. But for now, I'm going to put in a sentence. And now I've assigned an actual value to the greeting div inner HTML. So the last thing that we're going to do is, because we're still in code land here, nothing has been inserted into the HTML document. So now I'm going to say, hey, view. Do you remember view from earlier? We grabbed the view container. We're going to say, hey, we need to do something. And there's all these things that we can do on here. Of course, nobody has this memorized, so don't fret about understanding all of them. There's very common ones that you'll use over and over again. In this case, I'm going to append a child because I want it to be nested within it. And guess what we're going to give to the view? The greeting. So now we've completed the function here. Guess what the last piece that we have to do every time is? It's save our work. So here, I'm just going to quickly, I look at the dot, it needs updating. I'm going to save. Now, let's see what we've done so far. So we're going to go to the browser. We're going to close this up and get it all prepared here. So from the File menu, we can click File, Open File. Now, just before we do this, I just want to go over, normally this bar here is how we access the internet. We call an address, just like a telephone. We go out and call a phone number, I guess, if you want to think of it that way. But we can also reference files. So if we go to File, up here with the browser highlighted, we can see there's an Open File submenu that we can select. And here we have projects, and we have our EZCODE. That's where our VS Code is working right now. And we have our templates, and we have our source file. Now we want to reference the view HTML directly. So here we go, and we're going to open it in the browser. And there we go. The URL at the top says what users. In this case, the user is EZCODE, but that's not the directory we talked about earlier. It's in projects. Here's the directory, template, source, view HTML. So this is how we would grab it from a file system. And again, greetings to all of you. Now, if we right-click on the browser window, we can select Inspect, like we did before, and then click the Elements tab if not already open. The Elements tab is open. Great. Now we can see not only our HTML file, but also the HTML our JavaScript generated in the window onload function we just added. So here we go. Greetings to all of you. This div did not exist in the HTML file, and it still doesn't. So we generated that dynamically. So when the browser finds this file, or we give it to the browser, it loads the HTML. And as it does so, the browser already knows, hey, I better go get this file, style CSS, and I better get this JavaScript file. And when it loads it into its own runtime, which has document and window and various other things. And then it runs any code that we might put on the window onload or other various means. In this case, it did that. It's why we generated the div. And then you can see that we also have the rest of our HTML element with the HTML head body nested structure. These two things are enough to create functional websites and forms. However, it would not look very nice to do so. So nice job. We have completed the Easy Code Project Series Setup Video 4, and in the next setup video, number 5, we'll add some CSS or cascading style sheets to finalize our project's template. I'll see you then.